It's about $15 trillion of resources. It's coal. So actually, Donbass isn't a place per se. It's actually a portmanteau or a name given if you combine the Donetsk region. Bass means basin, and actually it's the Donetsk coal basin. So most of that $15 trillion is coal reserves. It was about 20% of the coal reserves of the USSR. So this is pretty fundamental. And on top of that, you've got gas. Ukraine could have been, might be one day, the second largest gas reserves in Europe after Norway.
So Brezhnev or Khrushchev knew where this place was?
President Khrushchev was very important for the deal done, for whatever reason, around Crimea, right? At the other end of the land bridge to Russia sits the Donbass, and this is one of the most valuable resource nexuses in the world, actually. And it's not just, I mean, if you tie the two together, you're talking about all sorts of things. Obviously, security, exports of grain, obviously the geopolitical nexus with NATO. But right at the heart of all of this is an incredibly valuable, frankly critical energy and resource nexus.
What is the status of it today? So as this war has dragged on as long as it has, what's the condition of that energy-producing apparatus in the eastern part of Ukraine? So,
I mean, right now, Russia controls about 20% of Ukrainian territory. It's actually that nexus between Donbass fundamentally and Crimea. That's precisely what has been seized or secured and is being claimed. It's been subject to a decade plus of very active activity. Obviously, the annexation of Crimea in 2014, attempts to effectively have a localized declaration of almost like UDI over to Russian control. A lot of Russian-speaking people all and up and down that nexus. So that's kind of the status where we are today. What's in it? In this area is the biggest nuclear power plant in Europe. It's the conduit through which electricity, some of it gets into Ukraine. It's a part of the, if you like, the crossroads for gas coming into Europe, or if not into Europe, into anywhere else going forward. So this is really mission critical.
A basic question here, but I'm curious how much this colors the perspective that President Zelensky would have if, in fact, he ever does sit down with President Putin and whomever else to hash out a deal. It does seem like we are so far removed from the likelihood of that happening, especially in light of what we saw over the last 24 hours with the new sustained attacks that Russia's had on Ukraine and these drones over Poland. But as he tries to figure out sort of how this war might end, there is a cultural component to this, but it sounds like a huge economic one as well.
It's a big economic one. I mean, obviously coming out of the Alaskan meeting between President Trump and President Putin, there was the comment, well, there's going to have to be some deal done or land swaps around to get a deal done. You know, I don't know, you can probably tell from my funny accent, I come from the UK or England, roughly, I don't know, London's what, 20% of the UK population. So it feels a bit to me in economics, a bit to me like, okay, well, we'll do a deal around the UK, but we want London. I mean, Donbass is so fundamental. There was I wrote a subject.
This is fascinating. Jonathan Maxwell with us. We continue. Chief Executive Officer, Sustainable Development Capital, foundational at HSBC and their work on infrastructure. Jonathan, I think all of this is really remarkably new to our listeners in America. So to David's point, if there's some form of negotiations, why should NATO, why should the West do anything but support Ukraine in taking back that mineral-rich industrial territory? Or do you, from where you sit, just say, that's it, we've given it up?
I think the perspectives of the West and Russia are very different on this. I think that there have been attempts to do deals around those resources. So in 2013, Shell had a deal to do deals around gas.
Well, President Trump would like to do deals. He's the mother of all
right,
deals.
And there's a little breadcrumb in there, which is in April. There was obviously a very big minerals deal done, or at least agreed in principle through an MOU with Ukraine. Look, I think that there's a big picture thing about I'm just going to say this very, very briefly. I don't have a lot of time. The world wastes most of these resources. I mean, here we are fighting over this stuff right now. I should say the West versus Russia, fighting over these resources which are critical in Russia, but actually, sorry, Ukraine. But what's actually going on is, meanwhile, about 2/3 of the US's energy is being wasted through generation, transmission, and distribution. Same in Europe. So here we are fighting over gas and, frankly, other forms of generation capacity, even industrial inputs. One of the biggest lessons that we need to learn is, rather than fight over it, don't waste it, because for every unit of this gas that we don't use in Europe is 2.5 we wouldn't have had to buy from Russia.